I was so surprised at the greed that was there at that table. It would blow your mind if you knew. Probably not, Nathan.
No,
Maybe.
probably not. I'm already thinking they're idiots anyway.
No,
So
I mean it just would blow your mind. Like it was all about money. What can, if we were to put him as a sectional, a presbyter, what would that look like as far as fundraising?
Welcome to Rettle's Pub, where we talk about the spirits while partaking of spirits.
want to welcome a friend of mine to the show. Me and Billy have known each other, man, 30 years. It's been a long time. Probably one of my oldest friends, really that I still can communicate with. We haven't talked in a while, but that's just busyness. There's nothing wrong with that. So Billy's on the show. Known him for a long time. He's got the same background I do, essentially, as far as religion, spirituality, where we started off, especially. So we're going to go through and kind of walk through his process, his journey of going through that and where he's at now. And just so you guys know, I don't know the full story, so this is going to be just as good for me as it is for you guys. So anyway, Billy, welcome to the show. First, what are we drinking here? What is this called? A Man-mosa? Is that what you called it?
So yeah, it can be called a Man-mosa, a beer-mosa. You can thank Black Walnut Cafe for these, and I haven't poured mine yet. I was waiting to get on the show to do some mixology. So
there we go.
All right, so it's just some good orange juice, and I think the best beer of choice for it is a Blue Moon.
Okay, that's what we went with. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple of other beers that I've seen use them, but Blue Moon, in my opinion, is probably the best one. So,
and I'm not really a beer drinker. I like Red Stripe. That's about the only beer I drink. I haven't tried Blue Moon.
All right, so I'm gonna spill it together while we're talking. So, Nathan, good to be on the show. I stumbled on. I saw something on either yours or Celeste's Facebook post, and what do you think of it? Just curious.
I like it actually, more than I thought I would, because I'm a little leery about beer, but that actually tastes really good.
Yeah, it's I don't like champagne, so all the times that I've gone and like, oh, let's have mimosas, I'm like, hell no. I hate champagne, so for me, this is something where I can stomach, a breakfast, something breakfasty for drink. So
there you go.
So it's a brunchy thing for a dude usually. So I stumbled on your podcast through either a post or something you had posted, and I remember making a comment about how I appreciated the thought challenge, and Celeste saying, well, if you're interested in a little bit of a thought challenge, go to. And so I did, and then I was hooked. I was listening probably, I was working out at the gym and listening while I was doing some workouts, and next thing I knew, I had been like 10 episodes in. And first of all, I was like, I knew your brother, but I was like, is there another brother that I don't know about? I never knew him at all. Right? And you kept talking about your brother and using a different name, and I was like, man, I'm confused. I don't know. I don't know him. Maybe he's not who I thought he was. I don't know. And so I was a little confused by that, but I figured it out when you accidentally called him by his real name one time, and I was like, yeah, that's his name. I knew it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but definitely appreciate the podcast, and definitely have enjoyed listening to it. Over the last probably 6 weeks now, I've really enjoyed just listening to it and understanding more about parts of you that kind of where we left off. As far as our friendship kind of left off, it's like I caught up with you by listening through your podcast. And there, definitely, I will tell you, there have been many times that I was listening and I'm like, I feel like I'm sitting in that apartment in Stinkadena and listening to you challenge something that was said in a Sunday service or something. And it'd be me, you, and Carrillo and Fuller or whoever all was there at the time, and just all of us just figuring out and you would always challenge. You always were challenging. And sometimes I thought you were doing it just to be contrary. And maybe you were, and maybe
sometimes I was. Sometimes I was like, well, I want to poke and see what happens. But yeah, I feel like if you're contrarian, maybe I'm going to learn something that I would not have thought of before by being that way. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much my history.
Fair enough. And so, so I've enjoyed, like I've said, I've enjoyed listening. There are definitely some areas that I relate to very well. There are some areas that have considered a lot of additional thought on my end, and like, wow, that's a great thought. That's a challenge for myself, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on today. So,
well, yeah, well, you're more than welcome, and in fact, if you want to, if you'd like to bring some of that stuff up, I'm good with having that conversation. That's really what the whole point of Rettles Pub, if you haven't heard or if I haven't said it on the podcast, is my thought behind it was, okay, let's imagine a pub in the late 1700s where you'd walk in and you're probably going to have spirituality discussed. On the other hand, you're going to have the politics and these things, but you're going to have a group of people who partake in certain beverages while they're having conversations, and sometimes probably the drunker you get, the better the conversations. And while that's not my goal today, it's to get drunk. Sometimes it's good to have a little bit of a, the stronger it is for me, the more I talk, the less I think about what I'm saying, and it just kind of comes out, which is, I think, is better when it comes from me. So anyway, so Billy, give us your, because I don't know that I remember your really early childhood and all of that. I know that you and I met, I think we were both 19, 20 when we first met.
I think I was 17 when you came to where I was on a crusade or whatever they called it back in the day.
Oh, by the way, everybody, Billy heard me preach my first sermon ever, just so you guys know.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, as we drink. So start with your youth and whatever you figure you want to share. If you don't want to share, that's fine too. But
Sure.
Whatever you feel like sharing as far as that process or that journey.
Sure. Yeah. So grew up typical United Pentecostal family, mom and dad. We grew up in church. Two older sisters. We all grew up, very, very Pentecostal. In fact, we lived 1 block away from the church, so we actually walked to church 5 times a week because we were that close. And we were there, and I've heard several of yourself and a couple of others mention, yeah, we were there on Sunday twice and pretty much all dang day, and then Tuesday night for prayer meeting, and then Wednesday night for Bible study, and Friday night for youth, and 5 times a week we were there at the church. So we were, that Pentecostal family, and we lived close. My mama was the organ player, so we were there for everything because whether it be choir rehearsal or whatever, someone trying to learn a new special or whatever, she had to be there to try and figure and help that out. So we were there, a lot. Church was the center of our lives, and it was, definitely, that Pentecostal upbringing. My dad passed away when I was 14, and my mother got remarried. My sisters were already graduating high school and out of high school and getting married and in that stage of their life. And I was, I was the little brother that was left, kind of left. And then my mom got remarried, and then we moved to Colorado for, I don't know, a couple. I moved only there for a couple of months. I quickly came back, moved in with the family from the church. And that didn't work and last too long. Just me being a teenager, they had young kids. It just did not work out. I ended up living on my own for a large portion of that. And I think when I met Nathan, I was living with a teacher of mine from school. I was, very involved in my high school as well at the time. And, I was in every club and everything possible social at the time. And so I was living kind of there. The church was a big support system for me, off and on. I would go to church, I would not go to church. I mean, when I lived by myself, I kind of had a little bit of freedom and liberty around that. And but I will say, I saw some real efforts of Christianity when I was living by myself. Like I had, pastor's wife would come and bring me food, and leave a coconut cream pie on my doorstep when I wasn't even there, and they would give me money and make sure that I was able to make it. And they were some of the kindest human beings that I knew, and the love that they had was pretty phenomenal. The love that they gave, and I would say that they really made this journey for me kind of complex and complicated, because they were really great humans, and so that great humanity kind of changed later, and I'm sure we'll get into more about that. So that's my early years. I went to seminary, or college, right after high school, and and it wasn't long that I was exited out of that for a little bit. Ended up getting married, going back, graduated. I say that I took the scenic route, because I took like 7 or 8 years to get through seminary college. So, had a kid in the middle of that, got married, had a kid in the middle of that. And those were my early years. Right after we left Bible college, I moved back to Colorado with a kid in tow and spouse. And we we were youth pastors before, while we were in college, and then after we left college, we became an assistant pastor. And that kind of brings you through kind of like my early 20s. So there you have that, early years, Nathan.
Early years. Yeah, TBC was it was interesting. Did you graduate from TBC? Because you were behind me in.
Yeah. So the way that worked is I was a year behind you originally, and then I left. We could put years on this if you want, but I left in the middle of my freshman year, and then sat out a year, went back, and started as a freshman all over again, because it was that bad my freshman year. Started all over as a freshman, and then just went through and finally graduated in 99. So that's where we.
Yeah, because I think I was there from 92 to. Well, I got married in 95, so it would have been 94 probably when I left.
Yeah.
I never graduated. I just wouldn't. I was bored with the whole thing, to be honest.
It's easy. It was easy to do.
Yeah. And then going into it, being a preacher's kid, you're I kind of went into it cynical anyway, which is probably why I was a bit of a nonconformist or a contrarian type person, is because, I'd seen people get up on the platform and preach hellfire and brimstone, then go home and do stupid crap. And, it's kind of like you see that and you realize, or for me, it was more like, I don't know how you deal with the hypocrisy of it. That was always my thing. And then at Bible college, that didn't make it worse, because you'd have the exceptional preachers get up and go to camp meeting or youth camps and preach. And then back in the dorm rooms, they're talking about, stuff that's should be talked about. Now, granted, I don't mind talking about it now, but I'm not proclaiming some sort of higher moral code either, And so that was always my thing, is that I came out of that cynical, and I think, I think that was a big deal, is for me. That even these days, I tend to be like, that motherfucker's lying right there. I mean, he's saying this on the platform, but I know he's going home and doing shit. So let's just go ahead and call it what it is,
Yeah, I think I recall some of those conversations, maybe without fucker, but yeah, I recall.
Yeah. I didn't cuss in those days. I'm trying to catch up. I didn't cuss for the first 40 years or so. I'm trying to make up for that time.
I can't say the same. I think I remember a trip you and I took one time with some friends. I was 17 and I had a good old 1979 International Scout.
Awesome. I remember that too.
Boy, y'all heard me lay through some cuss words back then.
Yeah, I think so. We were having issues. I can't remember what it was,
but yeah. So those are my early years. I guess I'll say this. I was baptized in Jesus' name at age 7. Holy Ghost, age 7.
Same.
Went to Crusader Youth Camp forever. Went to youth camp and Bible college and all that. Did the track that people that had a calling on their life did. So yeah, I would say typical, Southern Pentecostal upbringing. No television, sisters with no cut hair, makeup, and all dresses and long skirts. And
sports? Were you allowed to play sports?
no, hell no.
Yeah, to me either.
I mean, we couldn't even do Little League, and my mama to this day says, well, she says, well, I tried to get you to go do baseball, and I was like, I don't recall that, Mama. That's not how I recall that, but it's all right.
Yeah, I always wanted to play football. My dad was like, and this is what gets me now looking back, is my dad was like, no, because you'll lose your temper on the field, and that's not a good thing. But you talk to anybody that plays football, you learn how to control your temper in a manner that's probably more moral. I don't know what the right word is. More what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate than stamping it down for 50 years and then all of a sudden it all comes out. I mean, that's kind of my experience. You stamp it down, it's going to come out at some point, and it's not good for anybody. So
something I found interesting listening to the podcast, most people that came through the realms that we came through, it found like that 7 years old was all of a sudden a pattern. I don't know if you...
Yeah.
I feel like there's a pattern there, and I would be curious to do kind of a broader scope study on that, but it seems like 7 years becomes the age of accountability, right? All of a sudden. And I just find that is such an interesting thing when you start hearing like people that were brought up in our era and our time, that 7 years is all of a sudden that year of accountability. So I'd be curious what you thought about that.
Well, I'm wondering if that goes back to Crusader Camp, because I don't think you could go to Crusader Camp until you were 7, and you're 7 years old. You're gonna try to do whatever. Whatever.
Or all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, probably a lot of Pentecostals, whether they're preachers or not, probably received the Holy Ghost at 7 years old, got baptized because they went to Crusader Camp for the first time at 7. And I want to say that they would prep you for it before you go. Now, son, you want to try to get as close to God as you can, and so if I had to guess, that's probably what it is. And I would imagine if you go to different states, it may be different depending on when they're, because I would imagine that they all have some sort of Crusaders camp. That's just what we called it in Texas. So it may fluctuate depending on the state you're in.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess, that's probably what I would say is that you're prepped for Crusaders camp, which started at 7 years old.
Yeah.
Then once one kid does it, then every other kid's going to want to do it too. And so, there is the question, okay, well, how much of it was legit, and how much of it was just me trying to not be shunned by the people that I'm around, because, you learn that as a kid. You don't abide by these certain rules, and you're going to hell, and we may ignore you. That sort of thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. I didn't quite put that together, but yeah, that's probably a smart time, smart like age clarifier. It's like, oh yeah, whenever you were brought up in this, you went to Crusader camp or whatever camp it was in your state or district, so yeah, it's probably smart. Yeah, but I always thought that was weird. I've listened, and it seems like 7 was a lot. And I'm like, I wonder, is there a new age of accountability? Age 7 is your new age of accountability.
Yeah. Well, I think it's all societal based society, especially within that subculture or culturally based, I guess I should say, because Pentecostals are their own sect within a subculture, so, we're a subculture of a subculture. And after a while, it's just kind of, that would be my guess. So
I'm further along than you are, by the way.
Do what?
I'm further along than you are, by the way.
Oh, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm you got a bigger glass than me, though.
I do. Yours is darker orange than mine is too. So I don't necessarily follow the recipe exactly.
Celeste does, because she's a rule follower. So we're in your 20s. I remember probably that was about the time that we kind of not separated, but you moved. I remember you moved. I couldn't remember where you moved, but I remember you moved out of state. So we didn't talk as often. I think we may have emailed back and forth quite a bit, but this was before we were really interconnected with ease. So let's what happens after you leave?
Yeah. So I was an assistant pastor at a church there. I was teaching. It's a pretty good sized church. They ran about 300, I guess, 250, on an average. Wednesdays was about 150, right? So just that fluctuation, but it was a decent sized church. They had a Christian school, and I was a teacher at the Christian school, and then was the assistant pastor / jack of all trades, right? So did everything the pastor didn't want to do. So basically everything except Sunday morning. He wanted Sunday mornings. I got the rest of it. So, it was a good experience. I was really proud of the opportunity. Ended up becoming licensed with a general license while I was there. Quickly became on the board. I was the youth secretary there in the district, but because some of my negative journey really has to do with some specifics there, and I will tell you that experience really did. There was a lot of pressure from my spouse at the time. I mean, she was very, very unhappy while we were there. She was also teaching at the Christian school. She had graduated from Bible college as well, and she was very unhappy there. There was a lot of pressure there that was just weird and unique, and just so many dynamics going on with her and with the women of the church, and with a lot of things going there that created quite a mess. And so she was unhappy. So struggling with that already at home was difficult. There was also this big other underlying thing. And that big other underlying thing was I was struggling with my own sexuality. And we'll talk more about that because this journey definitely takes a big turn around that. And it's some of the part of this spirituality story as well. And coming through pieces of that. Sitting on that board too was the eye opener. I remember I was nothing but a puppet for fundraising, which was an eye opener for me. All I was doing was going around and evangelizing all over the state to raise money for She's for Christ. And they had me, preaching all over the state because they needed to raise money for She's for Christ, and I'd ask for offerings and all of it, and it was She's for Christ rally in every section, 3 times a year, and just going around raising money. I was basically a door-to-door salesperson for the district.
For missionary.
There you go.
So Billy, before we go too far out of it, kind of explain the board, because a lot of people may not understand it. I know what you're saying because, being part of it, but kind of explain it because you'll have more information about it than I do, because I never did it. So
yeah, so the district board was built up of a superintendent, which was kind of like what you would think of as the head of that district. So the way that churches are aligned with the United Pentecostal Church are you have all of the local churches that affiliate with the United Pentecostal Church, and I think this may have even changed since I've been out, so I really don't even know. But they've all been affiliated. They were affiliated with the United Pentecostal Church. They paid into their district board. The district board paid into the national or the general board, and so the district had the district superintendent was kind of the head, and then the district secretary, and then there was a youth president, and then there was a youth secretary, and then there were presbyters that were from each section from all around. They had these divided up into like
a county or a set of counties or something like that.
Subsections, right, of the state, depending on how big the state was. Like something like Texas was huge.
Yeah.
Something like, where I was, the state I was in was not quite as many sections. And so each of these sections had their own presbyter and had their own kind of youth-ish leader person, and so being elected in as a youth secretary was kind of a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal around the state. I had three objectives while I was there. The first one was fundraising, which blew my mind because I thought it was to promote and enhance like spirituality of the youth, right? No, number one was fundraising. Number two was to take care of youth camps, which I found out was also a moneymaker.
No, I imagine.
and then finally, kind of the bottom of that is to promote youth activities through the sections, right? So sectional rallies, things like that. So where we encourage but really, that was, I will tell you, that time period in my life is where I realized that, what, this is all about greed. And sitting in those board meetings, I was so surprised at the greed that was there at that table. It would blow your mind if you knew. Probably not, Nathan.
No, probably not. I'm already thinking they're idiots anyway.
No, so. I mean, it just would blow your mind. Like it was all about money. If we were to put him as a sectional, a presbyter, what would that look like as far as fundraising? Or what would that look like as far as money? Or what would that look like? Oh, no, we need to do the bigger church because the bigger church can have more financial influence. Or it was just insane. It was like a multi-level marketing scheme. And I sat there with like, I can't believe this. And speaking of MLM, so my pastor was part of a huge multi-level marketing thing, and he had all of his members of his church as part underneath him, and he would encourage, and he would go to their homes and spend time and talk to them and encourage them to join up. And hey, if you join up, you're helping support the church and you're helping support, and so people would jump into it, right? Because like, oh, well, I'm helping support the church, right? And he was like a diamond star member of this multi-level marketing thing because he had almost the whole state like contributing to it. Many of the presbyters, he was the general secretary. I mean the district secretary. So many of the presbyters wanted to get on his good side, so they were also contributing.
So he was making money off that deal.
Oh my gosh, the money he was making, and we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. He was making six figures off of nothing but this multi-level marketing thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. And and I don't have a problem with people doing that per se. I don't participate in them because I think it's somebody's gonna get screwed at the end. I mean, it's this, that last guy in is gonna get nothing.
Right.
But as long as you keep it like, this is my personal income, that's one thing. But if you're starting to say stuff like, oh, the church needs this to support it, I mean, that's plus you're getting paid tithes too on top of it, probably.
Come on.
Come on now. And sing it a little bit. But anyway, so go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I mean, I just, so I just found that the greed there was disgusting. It was because I came from a very, not a very wealthy family. I was homeless basically at 15. So to see kind of like this money making thing was just like, and it all being about money, and it just felt very, for lack of a better term, it just felt like I was, I don't know, just this religious concept was very bastardized, I mean, it just felt like everything was about money. And maybe it was just that district, maybe it was just the players on the board at the time. It may not be that way today. It may not be that way in other districts. Can't speak for others, but I will tell you, in my experience, it was all about bringing in money. It was my experience, and that became my reality of that's what the hell this is all about. And then kind of feeling like, and then trying to scrape together the money myself to pay my general dues and to pay my dues. And then they would try and get me to get more money for this and take more money for that. And I felt like, I mean, we were broke as hell as a young married couple, right? With 2 babies at that point. And then just pouring all of our money into, the multi-level marketing scheme that we had to do to support our church and our pastor, and paying our tithes, working at the church, making pennies on the dollar, and then being a part of this district board where I was spending a lot of my own money traveling all over the state, fundraising for them. I mean, yeah, I got a gold watch that said, coincidentally, "She's for Christ." I still have it somewhere, probably in the closet somewhere, because our district that year was the highest grossing district. Because I mean, I ran that hard like a carnival. I mean, we raised a lot of money that year. But then that was when I was like, where does this money go? Like, let's talk about what all this money that I'm bringing in. But anyway, so that's kind of my ministerial journey. I